Hi all, it's Akhil here from our Mortgage Broker. Thank you for joining me for the second part of this video. For those of you that have not watched the first video, I'm joined by Romey Chopra from the Chopra Property Group, who is a pharmacist, home operator, a HMO landlord, and a residential developer as well. So for those of you that haven't seen part one, go back onto the YouTube channel and watch the first video where Romey gives you an insight into his residential and his portfolio background, his development, and the types of deals he's done. So during the last 15 minutes in the intercourse, as you can see, Romey has now moved to the Bahamas. He managed to get to the Bahamas in 15 minutes, which is pretty amazing, Romey. So thank you for from the sunny side of Bahamas.
Well, I thought, you know what, the shirt didn't blend in with the last one. I thought this one tends to sort of blend in a lot easier, sort of goes quite well together. So I thought, well, you know what, we've been having such lovely weather. I thought, you know what, why not? Because obviously today is not such a great day. I thought, well, you know what, I love the sun, but this is my way of recreating the last few days of barbecue weather.
That's fantastic. Well, hopefully you've got your pina colada ready as well for this second.
Yeah.
So the reason why I wanted to do the second part was more of a, it was more of a two-way conversation around lessons learned from your projects and the finance aspect as well. So you and I'm quite heavily in the finance business. I help clients like yourself arrange finance, whether that's for the acquisition and the development, or as an if you want to retain those apartments or properties and so forth. So as we've touched on, you've completed eight one-bedroom and a mixture of 8 1- and 2-bedroom apartments in Reading in Berkshire. You're virtually done and dusted in Watford, where you created 4 one-bedroom apartments in the Watford City Town Centre. You're also currently at the end of a conversion of a HMO in which you're creating 2 HMOs, 1 5-bed, 1 6-bed. And as you said in the part 1 of the video, that's going to be completing in the next sort of 2 to 4 months.
Yeah.
And then there's obviously been a new project that you've acquired and you bought it subject to planning. And luckily during COVID, you've managed to apply and successfully be granted planning permission in Surbiton, which is a high street shop in which you're reducing the footprint in order to build a flat in the rear. And by reducing the footprint of the commercial unit, you're now going to you won't have any business rates. So then it's more appealing for a new business or a small enterprise to acquire that property. And I guess the large bulk of that investment and the return on your investment will come by way of the residential element in the back. So I think that's a great opportunity. So you've acquired property just before Brexit, during Brexit. You've acquired property prior to COVID and during COVID. I guess, you know, everyone can talk about all the great stories and how amazing it's been and how profitable it's been. But I know you on a personal level as well as a client as well. And you're a realist, right? So what I wanted to do here was talk about lessons learned and lessons that you've taken forward into your next project. So I want to take you back to Reading and then take it all the way up to Surbiton. And then in between that, I'm going to be going into how to finance it, because it's all well and good finding the deals, finding the trades, having the glamorous plans and so on. But if you're in a fortunate position to be cash rich, like for example, Warren Buffett, who's sitting on about 150 billion pound at the moment. So he's got a huge war chest, which I'm sure he's going to be going out to the market and playing in 2020, no doubt. So I want to give back to the audience that are watching this and how to actually finance these properties, and in particular, what are lenders looking for before they duly sign off on that mortgage or that loan to say, yes, Mr. Chopra, here's the development finance funds, here's the acquisition funds, and on your way. So it's lessons learned on each project. What have you taken forward, and a bit about the finance from my side. So with Reading, I've been to the site, I know it very well. It's now fully tenanted on a single AST basis. For those of you that are looking, so this is on a finance perspective, for those of you that are looking to develop a number of apartments within one block, some call it a multi-unit freehold block, which means if you've got 8 flats or whatever the amount is on one single land title, that's called a multi-unit freehold block. And that's what Romey and Manny have put together there it's multiple units on one freehold title. Lenders are going to be looking for aggregated value of that site in particular. So putting those together, they're going to look at the market comparables. They're going to ask the surveyor to demonstrate a valuation on the local market, the local comparables, the local sales, and ultimately the rentals that that property and that surrounding area can put together. So what the lender does there is, not all lenders offer a multi-unit freehold block loan product. So there's only particular lenders that do that. And it's more the niche lenders, the more commercially led and minded lenders that offer that type of structured finance. It is becoming more and more available. So contacting brokers like us who are independent, have got access to a wide range of lenders, can support you in that application. So the key things to look out for there is whether you are going to split that title, i.e. split the titles of each of the flats, or you're going to retain it. And I think it probably comes down to the exit plan. I know, Romey, you built those flats and you built it to a build-to-rent scheme, right? So you maintain those flats on a one-title basis. Tell us the lessons learned briefly in a couple of minutes on that site in particular.
I think when we first, the plan actually was to begin with, Akhil, was about halfway through, there was a lot of buzz around serviced apartments, and that was our actually first plan. We actually got serviced apartment companies coming in, we drew up plans. As you know, Reading is a real bustling part of the world, and obviously now with the Crossrail terminus there as well. And it's one of those areas where serviced apartment isn't saturated at the moment. So we dabbled a little bit with that idea, and but we very quickly realized that it was a model that wasn't quite mature enough yet. And we realized that, having made quite a large commitment, because obviously that was a £2.5 million GDV project, so we had a significant sort of exposure. So it was important that we needed to create some sort of continuity. And so we decided on that one, after some long discussions, about moving to the AST model. We were very strongly helped by the good, strong commercial agents who sort of explained to us a little bit about. So what we had was, we'd already furnished some of the apartments. We'd already fully furnished them. So out of the 8 apartments, 3 of them were already, because obviously we were trialing the service department idea. So we literally furnished them top to bottom, everything, knives, forks, spoons, everything, a whole shebang. And that that worked quite well for us, because what it does was, when the agents then were showing people around, they could show them the apartments that were empty versus the ones that were fully done up. And that helped quite well in terms of doing that, in terms of getting them let out. I think more importantly, we managed to get top rents for them as well, because we'd done them to a very good standard. So the lessons learned from that was that, as far as we'd gone around, we'd looked to see who our competition is, the quality of the build, and we spoke to about 4 or 5 different agents to see which of the properties either sold or let out the quickest, what were the top 5 or 6 things that they were looking for in order to help them move it very quickly. And we basically utilized that in our interior design of the property. So, we put Antico floors in, we put German kitchens in, we put sort of high quality bathroom finishes in, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that I would say, and if I look back, within about 6 weeks, all 8 flats were rented out, which I think clearly shows it worked. But more importantly, we didn't compromise on any of the rentals at all. So I would say that that's a key lesson for me is, when you start a project like this, engage with the professionals, speak to the agents, because they know their bread and butter. They know what works, what doesn't work. As far as the finance is concerned, remember, Akhil, we did that back in that project. We started in 2017, 2018, 2019, different world to where we are now. So as you touched upon the multi-unit block, we were fortunate enough to be able to get that refinanced on a multi-unit scheme on a single title without having to do the split. So I think, had that been today, probably a very different story in terms of the valuation side of things. So on hindsight, probably I would say, had we sat down with someone like yourself and said, right, Akhil, we want to look at maximizing the value, and how we can get the lender to look at this more favorably, I would have probably gone down the split title route, like you've just mentioned. So I think that's something that the lesson learned on that one, I'll probably start having a conversation with you a bit earlier than I did, rather than leave it right to the end on the renting project.
That's good. So no, thank you for that. And I think it's for everyone that's out there listening to this. I always say have the end in mind first, and work backwards, because ultimately you might want to build this amazing structure and put in all the great amenities and
Absolutely
in it, but have the end in mind. And but what I mean by that in particular is the key thing is ultimately, if you're looking to refinance that onto a term facility, what are the real genuine market rents that are achievable in that area? What has rented out for those? What is actually has rented out rather than just be marketed? And what are the resale values as well? Because ultimately, when you go out back to the refinance market, the lenders are going to push this out to the surveyors, and it's the surveyors that are going to either tick that box for you to say yes, that property deserves an aggregated value of 2.5 million, for example, in your case. So yes, to dress the apartments well, make sure they're well dressed, but have the end in mind. And it's key that you work with the key professionals from the outset, and that will be the estate agents. It could be the room dressers. It could be the managing agents. It could be the mortgage broker as well. So the key thing is, and I tell all my clients, is engage with all the professionals that you need to finish off the project, because the last thing you want to do is have a hindrance in the project, because ultimately you'll lose time. You can't put money on time, and then ultimately you might be out of pocket on the back end, which might then scupper the deal in 100% for it in that instance, for example. So that's good. Fortunately, the numbers stacked, Romey, which is amazing. There's lessons learned. I know you had a model of it that you were going to take it down the service accommodation route or the single AST route. So it was good that you had a couple of choices, and because the area demanded that sort of appetite, you had that. And then I guess you put that in your mind before you even dug a spade in the ground, right? So you had a couple of opportunities who your ideal tenants are going to be for the long term, which is amazing. And that's what lenders want to ask you, because not all lenders offer mortgages for service accommodation. Some will only do it on an AST basis. Some will do it on an Airbnb basis. Some will do a service accommodation. So it's understanding what the lender's appetite is, how high they're going to gear their lending, the LTVs. We're coming out of COVID now, or we're in COVID at the moment. Now, hopefully we come out of COVID in 2020, and very soon in particularly. What are the new loan to values going to look like, right? So I'm in the finance business. The market's reacted in March. The lenders pulled a lot of their products off the shelves. And that was for the simple reasons of they had to get staff working remotely, get technology put in place. They had an influx of mortgage holiday applications. So I think there's about 6 million of those around ticking on at the moment. And then they've got clients that they had to staff that they had to furlough as well. So apparently there's about 6 million people on furlough. And so there was a huge market in March, in particular with the lenders in mind. And what we've seen over the last few weeks, and in particular in April, is those lenders coming back into the market, but with an increased appetite, but more of a bearing in mind the risk-weighted asset as well. So they're concentrating on bread and butter stock, roughly 65% loan to value, depending on how quirky the asset is itself. So for those of you that are interested in those particular mortgages, multi-unit freehold blocks, there are lenders out there that are offering those types of mortgages. They are very much subjective to loan size against the value of the site and the loan to value. But do give us a call at ourmortgagebroker.co.uk and we'll be delighted to assist. So Romey, that was Reading in between 2017 and 2019. You then, you didn't stop there. You didn't let any hindrance. You carried on going. So then the next one was Watford, was it?
Yeah, Watford. I started that.
How did you come across Watford?
It was presented to us. In fact, it was a builder who approached me. He actually was a regular visitor to the J6 property meet, and he met us sort of after the event and asked us, could he buy us a cup of coffee? So we met up with him, and he said, look, I found a fantastic site in Watford, and I didn't really know Watford that well. I've been there a few times, but never really looked at it as a as an area. So we went out and looked at the site, and the great thing was, the interesting conversation I had with the builder was, listen, I'm great at building, I'm not great at all the other stuff. And so I'm really looking to see if I can JV on this project. So that started the conversation on that particular project, where I know what I'm good at, and I know the areas that I can bring, the value I can bring to the table. So we had a very constructive discussion, and we decided to create an SPV and set up as joint partners on this particular project. This project was quite challenging because it was very much a specific space. There was nowhere to store material. There was literally off the truck on the site, build it up. So very different from many of the other sites I've done previously, like Reading, for example, where we were very, very fortunate to have 900 square meters of open space to sort of put stuff and keep stuff in storage. Watford, very different logistical situation in that one. But the good thing was the contractor that I decided to work with had said, listen, I've taken on this project because I know how I can address these challenges, and my workforce will be able to work through those nuances. So that sort of gave me that the confidence of saying, okay, he's already thought it through. So we sat down today, again, crashed the numbers, which obviously is something that's very important to me, looked at all the contingencies, the what-if scenarios, all of which we put down on paper. And as I said, with that one, we decided to use a bridging facility, followed up by a development finance facility. Obviously, Akhil, I'll leave you to probably explain to your viewers a little bit about how that works. I'm sure most people have heard of bridging in some capacity as well. Bridging's always scared me, Akhil. I've always been a little bit wary about bridging because I've always heard horror stories about it. So I went into it very tentatively. I know you and I spoke at great lengths on this particular project when you were wearing a slightly different hat to where you're wearing today. But nevertheless, I think, that again, I reiterate to all your viewers that constant communication with yourself and your colleague at the time really helped us go through quite a difficult situation at that one time, because we were up against it, because the vendor gave us a 4-week timeline to go across the line. We managed to get a reasonable discount off that because he'd been messed about quite a bit on that site. A lot of other developers had come on site, had looked at it and walked away from it because they thought it was going to be a logistical nightmare. So for that reason, we were able to gain the site. But the only way to get the time frame working, rather than the traditional route, we would never have been able to get it within that time frame. So when we came to you, we managed to create this. Okay, there's going to be a little bit more expensive. There's going to be a little bit more slightly higher interest rate attached to it. But because we'd already managed to get a 15 or 20% reduction in the price, that sort of offset the sort of front end charges that we would have to pay to go on a slightly different product compared to maybe a term product. So I think, again, lessons learned. Again, I'd learned my lessons from Reading, get to talk to you a little bit earlier on in the game. I think and at that time, as I said, I think the numbers looked really good. We had the survey done on the site. Survey came out very positive. So clearly we felt that it was, we were getting north of 25% profit on the project, which is always a good sign, clearly. And that was already putting the contingencies into place, which I think again served well. I think that we did have issues during the project. One of those, as I think I mentioned on the first video, Akhil, where the building control underwriting insurance company went bust. So we then had to revert to the local building control. And when they came in, they instituted significant changes to the original design, which then effectively, ate into our contingency and then some. So we had to put in a fire mist system. We had to redesign. He wanted the kitchens. Typically, a lot of designs were very open plan. We had an open plan kitchen lounge area. They were not happy with that. They wanted them to be fully enclosed. So these are the sort of things you have to take into consideration. These things happen in projects, and you've got to be aware of them. So you need to have some slack in the deal. And I think and I remember when you and I had this conversation and about bridging, you just say, look, Romey, just make sure you've got some slack in there, because always expect the unexpected. I think you and I always said this, and you know, sure as damn it, it happened. And had we not put that contingency in place, I think things would have been a little bit more challenging. Fast forward now to the end, I think although we've completed the project just before COVID, we've managed to get building control sign off and everything else. The refinancing has been a real challenge. I'm not gonna deny that, and I think that's primarily because all the logistical reasons that we talked about in the earlier video. I think the key thing I think I missed out on this one was that this was on the back of a commercial and existing flats which were already pre-sold. What we still kept it in one title, Akhil, and this was something that obviously I only learned about recently, was we should have split the title earlier on. We should have had the commercial element separate from the residential element. We didn't do that. That's obviously eaten into time. Obviously the lawyers are doing it now, but they're doing it at a time where obviously there's all sorts, because the issue we've got now is land registry are not working on full capacity. Getting any changes on your land registry titles now normally takes 48, 72 hours. It's probably taking 2 or 3 weeks at the very least. And that's going to impact, because obviously until that's set, the mortgage company are not going to be able to move forward until they physically see that, or maybe get an undertaking from the solicitor to do that. So again, I think you hit the nail on the head. It's all about planning ahead, and particularly now that multi-unit on a single title block is going to be more difficult. And I would look at splitting it. And even with the four flats, we're now having to create individual leases for each flat as well, which is something that had not had to do with Reading. So we're having to institute that now. Time, cost, everything else as well. As I said, we've had the survey done. I, as a rule, whenever I have a valuation, I always put a valuation pack together. Something, again, I remember you and I have spoken about before. Be prepared, be prepared, be prepared. And a lot of, and I'll tell you what, when I made that pack, the surveyor, the valuer came around and he said, "Thank you very much, Mr. Chopra. That's going to be really helpful." And everything in that was to state where I needed it to be. And he said, "Right, I can clearly see you've done your homework, Mr. Chopra. That's very good to see. And that's going to help me a lot in terms of where the final report's going to end up." And I tell you, I've done this 5 or 6 times on HMOs, on every very valuation. And I can say, Akhil, hand on heart, I would say my success rate is almost 99%. There's only one where I was about 5%. But my number, when I did Reading, I put 2.475 million, and it came up at 2.475 million 500 or something.
On the point.
Yeah. So I urge everybody, as I said, is when you're in a situation like this, what lenders I think want to see is that, okay, Mr. Chopra, you're suggesting this, you're suggesting that. How can you substantiate that? So what I do is I go out there and I do my research, and I think it's thanks to listening to people like yourself, Akhil, who urge people to do your research, do your homework, speak to people like yourself, speak to agents, speak to letting agents, commercial agents, etc., estate agents, everybody, because they are there and they will give you the real story. Just going on a Rightmove and a Zoopla isn't going to cut the mustard. I think you've got to, and I think that sets you in a very good precedence in front of the person that's, and when you present a pack like that, I think it pays massive dividends. And I'm hoping that the same will occur with the Watford one.
Thank you for that. And I think for me, Watford stands out as quite a great project, a great acquisition, but one that comes with many, many, many issues as well. And I think I'm in a fortunate position, being a finance broker. I'm in a fortunate position because I speak to the likes of yourselves and dozens others every day of the week, and I'm hearing the plans and the contingencies that they're putting in place, and then pushing back to say, well, I don't mention any names to any clients because of confidentiality, but I always say, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about this? Because I've had a case in the past where this has happened, this has cropped up, and it's good because that time, particularly in Watford, you've got two major commercials on either side, right? So I think you had a party potentially as well. And as you said, the delivery of materials had to go on site and for them to build immediately. So you didn't have any benefit of having storage or anything. Because I remember even for toilets as well, you couldn't even put a toilet on site, could you?
No, we had to actually in our CDM officer that came around, we actually had to negotiate with the fortunately they were very, very, very accommodating. They had a little office in the front where we put all our material, our health and safety documents, etc., etc. And they were very kind enough to use us to use their bathroom facilities. There was a lovely Italian cafe a couple of doors away. I think you joined me for a sandwich and a cup of tea there when you came last time, Akhil, from memory. And very, very nice in terms of, so we engage with the local community there as well, and that helped. That went a long way. And I think again, when we finished that, I did realize that again we thought about service departments at that point. We did look into that again because Watford was another interesting area. The actual property is only about 900 yards away from the Watford Junction station, Akhil, which is about a 15-minute train ride into London. You can see the shopping centre. It's about a 5-minute walk to the Intu shopping centre in Watford Central. So really good location. And that again, we engaged an agent. Obviously this was during COVID, and we did virtual viewings. He did a very good video presentation and presented it. And during COVID, Akhil, we managed to rent all 4 of those, even despite the fact that we couldn't do any physical viewings. The agent took care of it. He was very, very slick in terms of how to operate during the city. And this is about being creative. You know what I mean? I love where someone can't work through the normal mechanism and then has to think out of the box. And he managed to, and it's amazing because I had a chat with him last week. He says he's busier now than he was pre-COVID in terms of people moving, because at the end of the day, if people need to move, they need to move. Yeah. And when they see, these assets, and these are all brand new, very centrally located, and I think that's worked really well. So, we've now managed to, as I said, let out all of those, and importantly as well, at good rental figures, which helped again support the refinance application. Because the question that came out, Akhil, on this one was, you want to refinance these 4 assets. It's during COVID. You're probably not going to be able to rent them out. That means you're going to have 4 empty flats. Have you got the funds to cover the rent, the repayment, the payment figures to us for 3 months? So they wanted us to demonstrate that we had funds to cover the next 3 months on the basis they would be unlettable or non-lettable during the COVID situation. So arguably, if you've got 4 flats or arguably £1,000 a month, they want to see £12,000 of cash funds liquid in your bank account day one, before you've even started. So these are sort of things that you're going to have to start thinking about. So as I said, that they may throw a little bit of a curveball at you, and you think, well, I didn't expect to have to forward fund my payment to the mortgage company, because I think they are just mitigating their own risks, because they know that letting out apartments is going to be challenging, particularly in this current situation. Most of the big letting agents, Akhil, are closed. The big names on the high street are, and it's the smaller operators that maybe don't have the resources that some of the big boys, like the big boys in London, have. But I think they are taking advantage of the fact that while everybody else is shut shop, they're very busy working, because they clearly see that there is a market out there, people to work. And so I've engaged with those types of agents and those types of professionals, and it's worked really well for us on that particular case. So I think that's where you have to. That's all about adapting, and thinking, okay, right, I can't do what I did before. How do I adapt? Work with somebody who knows how to do it. Bang, click with him, takes care of it, and it's worked. It's worked really well.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. with developments, for those of you that are watching, it's not like the last case. It's not like your previous development, because it's all, every new development's has its own nuisances as well. So you've got to factor in a lot of the issues that could crop up, and by way of engaging with the right professionals from the outset, and that might be a party wall surveyor, it might be an architect, it might be a who else? What other professionals do you need on a development site from inception?
You need a structural engineers,
Yeah.
as well, because obviously you've got all the structural side of it. I mean, on Watford, we had to do. There was a question that because of the party wall, Akhil, initially we looked at underpinning, but as soon as you to the word underpinning, particularly when you've got neighbouring properties, everyone gets a bit excited about that because there's something, oh my God, underpinning. And so we had to go for something called a cantilever, which is a slightly different type of structural support system for that. But it doesn't then, because on one side of the property, there'd been a new development. And they were very concerned that, because remember, the new development will have a slightly shallower foundation level to an older property. So it's interesting that when you are then digging down, you're going to be going under their foundations in order to dig into yours. So that was something that we had to bear with. And this is where you have to start working with all the professionals to work that. So we had a fantastic structural engineer who came up with a fantastic, because initially there was all, well, as soon as you mentioned underpinning, the original plan suggested underpinning. And the reason why a lot of the developers didn't go ahead with it, because they knew they were going to have a real challenge convincing the party neighbors to go with the underpinning process. So that's why many of them walked away. The wonderful thing about this was that the developer, the contractor I used, got in conversation with the structural engineers and suggested an alternative means of support called cantilever, which I never come across. I learned a massive amount. I mean, the good thing is that every project I'm doing, I'm learning so much.
Yeah.
It's a constant learning. There's no two projects are ever the same, Akhil. Each and every one of them have their own nuances, have their own issues, come what may. Whether it's a right to light issue, whether it's a structural issue, whether it's a DPC issue, whether it's whatever. There's a whole myriad of things that can crop up in these situations. And so I think you've got to just be prepared to, whatever it throws at you, and it will throw the odd curveball. And that's the point where you need to, right, okay, I need to now sit down with my team or engage a professional to say, hey, I've got this bit of a challenge here. How do I get around it? And there's always a solution, generally. I haven't come across something. I don't believe this. I'm a big believer of nothing's impossible. Everything's possible. Yeah. It just comes with a price tag, and it comes with a time frame element possibly with it.
Yeah, no, I agree. And no, you totally hit the nail on the head there. Again, it's no previous developments like the previous, and I guess your future ones are not going to be like the ones you had in the issues you had in Watford. Hopefully not anyway. And it goes back to the finance side as well. And with commercial and development finance in particular, it's not an off-the-shelf product. So for the viewers out there that are potentially looking to move into developments and come out of residential, the PRS sector in particularly, want to move into development, it can be very profitable, but it does come with a lot of issues potentially as well. So all about doing your due diligence, and it's like anything, do the numbers stack? Have you got the right people within your team? And Romey was fortunate that his JV partner, who's actually a builder as well, they went into the deal together. So I guess the other JV partner had the building mindset, and he knew how to tackle those issues, whereas Romey knows about finance. He's in the game, and he's worked on different sites as well. So for those of you that are interested in development finance, it's another arm of our business, and we work with many different development lenders out there. And the beauty is that we actually fight for your fight the lender. We make sure that the lenders compete for your business, because it's not an off-the-shelf product. It's very bespoke to your development site, your scheme, your project. What the key things I would say you need to put together before you engage with brokers like ourselves is you need to have a schedule of works. So a schedule of works with, and it needs to be quite concrete. It needs to be very robust, and that will include the purchase price, the material costs, contingencies. Now, everyone talks about a 10% contingency. To be honest with you, I think 10% days have now disappeared. I think every new scheme has got its own nuances, as we've talked about here. And I think we need to up that. And ultimately, the more you up it, it might look like you're losing money on the profit side, but hopefully you don't need to use that, and then that'll come back into fruition on the back end. So it's key that you have the right contingencies, and lenders are going to be deep diving into your schedule of costs, because ultimately it's the schedule and who the actual builder is and what their contract, what their CV looks like, which will demonstrate the strength and the viability of your project in question. So.
Yeah. I mean, just touch on that. I think it's a very, very valid point, and something that. So another very, very important professional that comes in is the QS, quantity surveyor. Now, for those that haven't, I mean, in most traditional, builds, most people may not engage with the quantity surveyor. In a project of a reasonable size, the QS will give you a full schedule, and that's going to again serve you very well in front of a lender, because a quantity surveyor are effectively qualified to be able to provide you with a very robust, and they have a mandate they have to work with in terms of that. Importantly as well, as you know, Akhil, when you then take a development loan from the bank, it's on a drawdown facility, and typically it's on a milestone process, so they will do it on stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, etc., etc. Each time each stage is reached, the bank will send their own appointed, what they call monitoring surveyor, who's also a QS as well. So I've worked with 2 or 3 different monitoring surveyors from the bank. I would meet them on site. I would discuss about whether they're happy with the works that have been done. Managed massive learning curve for me about what they expect, what they see, and more importantly as well, in terms of how their mindset works, in terms of ensuring that things are done right, and the do's and don'ts during the development process. So as well as using my own QS to do the original schedule and costings of works, I would urge everyone to engage with the bank's professionals that come out, particularly their monitoring surveyors. Enormous amount to learn from them. I've, as I said, I've worked with 2 or 3. Many of them now have become professional, as well as professional acquaintances, as well as social acquaintances. So I can pick up the phone and say, listen, Peter, I'm doing a project in Surbiton, for example. Really good to get your views about, have you done projects in that area before? Any things I need to look out for, et cetera, et cetera. Because obviously every area, it may have a situation where an area has a conservation policy, or has other type, it may be a locally listed building, all these things. These can all impact, and the surveyors will be a real, very, very useful people to be able to tell you, well, that brick is going to cost you not 80p a brick, it's going to cost you £3.50 a brick, because it's only that brick that will be allowed to be used in that particular location. And no disrespect to the builders, but they may not have that nuance of information. We found that in Watford as well. We had, they wanted us to use something called Welsh slate for a tile on the roof. And we had a long discussion with the conservation officer about this. If the conservation officers had their way, they'd want you to put, fancy Victorian style windows and Welsh slate tiles. I mean, you'd be out of pocket, you'd be out of budget within 24 hours. So you need to know how to have a conversation with them, and that was the help with the QS to say, well, okay, we can use something that looks the same but doesn't have to cost anywhere near the same price. So the Welsh tile, as I said, would probably be 20, 30, 40% higher than a normal Spanish slate tile, but it looks exactly the same. So this is the sort of things that I would urge everybody who, if you haven't had any discussions or conversations with the QS, urge you to connect with one, understand how they work, how they produce a schedule of works, where the costings can differ here, there, and there. They are a wealth of information. That's certainly a great source of a great professional to have on your power team, for sure.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and thank you for that. And it goes back to engaging. It goes back to what we've always talked about: is engage with the right professionals. Spend a bit of cash up front, because the last thing you want to do is get your feet into muddy waters, and then you're cash strapped, you're cashless at the back end, and then you're up in arms, and then you've got a whole load of issues to deal with. So with regard to that Watford site, I think there's loads to take away from that. I hope you guys have enjoyed that, particularly about Watford. With regards to the development finance, traditionally it's been about a third. So if you work on that basis, you usually do quite well out of that deal. And in particular, what I mean by that is you've got an end value of £1 million. Usually that means you should acquire the site for roughly £333,000. It should cost no more than £333,000 then to build it, which equates to 666. And then the last portion, which is the last third of 333,000, is your profit. Now, for those of you that worked those metrics, it's usually a good metrics to have. But as I said, with every development scheme, that doesn't necessarily always fit, because Romey, you probably say 33% profit on a deal would be quite amazing, eh?
Yeah, no, I think the third is it's a wonderful. I think 10 years ago it was the norm, but I think much more challenging. But look, we play the long game, Akhil. So I think the key thing is these are assets that we're keeping. They're going to be income generating assets, and I'm hoping over the next sort of 10 years or so we will hopefully see some capital appreciation, because we bought them right, we built them right, they're well located, and I think the key thing then is that there are in areas which are growing, and I think the sort of areas like Watford and stuff, which are sort of 15, 20 minutes train ride into London, I think are always going to sort of retain a reasonable certain value in the market space going forward. So, as I said, like we've always said, Akhil, is you make your money on the buy.
Yeah.
Key thing is buy right.
Yeah.
Buy right. Do your numbers. As I said, engage. I think finance now is a very different and a much more complex process than it was even back as 5 years ago. I think development is not for the faint-hearted. I mean, I was a landlord and I jumped into the development game. But I think the key, more so now than ever before, is always expect the unexpected. Put all those contingencies in place. I would say contingencies of north of 15% would be a norm, I would say today. You're absolutely right. I think 10%, I think you might find yourself a little bit shortchanged on 10%, Akhil. I think you're absolutely right.
I think the key thing is sorry to cut you there, Ryan, but lenders are long in the tooth, and they're going to look at worst case scenario, right? Because you'll do that, for example, 90% of cost. They're going to ensure that the contingencies, they're going to make sure they're going to weather the COVID.
Well, Akhil, I'll be honest, I mean, when anyone asks me, I always say to somebody, when I go and look at a site or I look at a potential opportunity, I use a very funny analogy. I say to them, I throw every hand grenade and missile at it. And if it's still standing after I've thrown everything at it and I still come out in the black, then it's worth having a look.
It's one for me, yeah. No, I agree.
So I always believe, I don't believe in hope value. I believe in real. If you can find something that you believe, you see, the great thing is that people that connect on, your audience are people that are looking to get educated and learn more. So already they're in a privileged group. You're in the top few percentile of people who, particularly now, is what's going to make the difference between the people who are professionals and what I call the pretenders. If you want to be in the property game now, then you need to up your game and become a real professional, because I think the financiers now are going to be selective, and they want to work with players, not and professionals. So it's a bit like if you want to be in the Premiership League, if you want to play for the top flight clubs of Liverpool, Manchester City,
you've got to eat healthy, I say.
Yeah, well, that absolutely.
That rules me out.
The whole thing, and you've got and what it's like there. You're as soon as if you're off your game, you go down very, very quickly. And I think and I think now you've really got to. I think every business out there is now having to really look and think about how on earth are they going to start engaging and moving forward. And I think we do have to do the same. We're no different. We're in an asset class which arguably I still believe is still the best asset class to be in, bar none, at this moment in time, because it's a necessity, Akhil. We all need it in some way, shape, or form. Whether it's, as I said, whether it's a shed, whether it's a castle, whether it's a house, whether it's a warehouse, whatever it is, we all need it in some capacity. Without it, we can't function. And that's going to be like that for many, many years to come. Schools, airports, they're all buildings in some capacity. So I think, I think the key thing now is what we're going to start to see is certain properties where the model doesn't work. What I think the big buzzword is repurposing that building. So people like ourselves will see the uneducated will see the asset in one dimension. The educated professional will see that in a multifaceted dimension.
Yes. And it's nice that you touched on that point, because when I speak to a lot of my clients, I engage with them by asking them the right questions. Have you got multiple purposes for that building? So if you're buying something, have you only got one single narrow-minded solution, or have you got a couple or two or three? And the key thing is, when you're buying something, the money, the value, the profit is always on the inception, right, on the purchase side. So it's key that you've got multiple purposes. And again, with refinancing as well, there should be no fast rule that it's going to get the value that you're expecting, because if that scuppers because of COVID or whatever factor it could be, what's plan B? And that's what we do at our mortgage broker as well, right? We give them other solutions, other opportunities, other exits as well, because what you want to do is you can't exit, for example, a development finance facility. And then what are you going to do? You're going to pay the extension fees, which could be quite extortionate. So about doing your homework, doing the numbers. And I think future proofing, as you touched on there, it's all about professionalizing yourselves, engaging with professionals. Sometimes you may need to pay something up front to get that valuable advice or that guidance, because it'll save you a lot of money in the future, right? And that's the conversations we're having with a lot of our clients, is future proofing your investments. I think, to be honest with you, I'm going to ask you that question in a second, but I actually think we're going to see a price movement, a correction, whatever you want to call it. I'm only a weatherman, and there's lots of armchair economists out there as well. But I think we might see a 15% price drop in 2020. But I'm a big believer of UK real estate. It's always a safe haven. It's always gone up over the last hundreds of years. So, but I think the key thing is to do your numbers, engage with the right professionals, look at other asset classes as well. So don't just concentrate on single dwelling properties. Look at HMOs, look at commercials, look at other types of property, because yields down, especially in the south where we are not that great in terms of rental yield or capital growth in the current markets. So you may need to look at, as you've done, because you've done the right thing, you've diversified your portfolio, you've gone from single dwelling assets to HMOs, which are going to pay you a greater return. And now you're that development in that commercial space. So I guess you've got your thinking cap on well ahead of Brexit and COVID. Not that you knew COVID was coming, but then you've diversified. So we've got about 3 more minutes on this call. Leave us with 3 top tips for our viewers. Basically what you're going to be doing for the rest of the year.
In a nutshell, I think I would say, it's business as usual, albeit with a different perspective. And like you said, you touched on pricing. I think, you've got to start putting these into your spreadsheet and look at how that's going to affect your business, because I focus on what you can control. Don't think about what you can't control, right? Leave that to Rishi Sunak and his crew, because we have no control over that. Yeah. I think unemployment is going to be a big factor, Akhil. I think if they can control unemployment, that's going to affordability. We've got historical interest rates here. So that's going to keep the affordability. That's where I think interest rates will probably remain at that level for a period of time. Who knows how long? But I would suspect for the next couple of years, I can't see too much movement in that side of it, because the market is just too fragile. There's a lot of talk about the next budget. I know you've got your views about what you think is going to happen in the budget. I think the government has to realize that in order to stop a steep recession, they will need to put some stimulus into the market. So I would say to people, watch out. There's possibly a situation with SDLT, particularly for second properties. There's talk about maybe him removing the additional 3% on the second buy, which would be great for the market, in my honest opinion. So I think I would say that the budget's one to watch out for. Listen to what he's going to say. There could be some golden nuggets to come out of that. Hopefully, let's see what happens. But I think I would say over and above, just look at your business and just keep keep it tight, keep it right. And when you approach a lender, if the lender sees you as a professional business operation who's done their homework, done their due diligence, has a fantastic support team, people like yourself, Akhil, people with your team, you've got a fantastic team of people behind you, which covers pretty much all aspects of the property process, whether it be development, whether it be bridging, etc., the whole shebang. And I think that serves you when a lender can see that a developer or a landlord is engaging and getting good advice, and it's all about a good business case. If you want to, when you go to a bank and say, listen, Mr. Bank, this is my business, I need you to lend with it. They're going to look at business plans. They're going to look at spreadsheets. They're going to look at forecasting. They're going to look at, all the risk mitigation, et cetera, et cetera. Go in there with that mindset. And I think that's going to serve you very, very well in the future, because we all know there's going to be a bit of a rocky, it's going to be some stormy waters ahead. It's going to be a little bit harsh out there. And it's the ones that are prepared, strong, and have taken advice from professionals like yourself, who start to think ahead and as you said, the word future-proof. That's the key. Future-proof your business, because that's the only way I think you're going to be able to be able to move forward and grow. Because at the end of this, I think, as you quite rightly said, I'm in agreement with you. I think there will be a steep upwards curve, and you want to be absolutely ready for that curve. All engines, all firing on all 4 cylinders, ready to go. So when it goes up, you just jump on that wave, a little bit like a surfer, and ride that wave, man, and smile when you're on the top.
No, thank you. Romey, you've been great. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your experiences, and thank you for your honesty.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
A lot of things up, but I know I can always count on you on being honest. And I thank you for that. I know that we're probably going to be speaking to each other later, because we're going to come up with another great idea or something like that. Ladies and gents, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you found that useful. That is Romey Chopra from the Chopra Property Group. I'm Akhil Mair from Our Mortgage Broker, your go-to finance broker for anything related to property, whether it's residential and commercial. Think ourmortgagebroker.co.uk. And join us on our social media channels, at Our Mortgage Broker. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on Instagram. What else are we on? We're on LinkedIn. We're not on TikTok. Are you on TikTok, Romey?
No, I leave that to the kids. I don't get involved in that.
Yeah, nor do I. But listen, guys, we're here for you. It's all about engagement. It's all about working together, working collectively. We're an independent mortgage brokerages. We've helped clients like Romey Chopra. We're open and honest. We work on a Monday. We work on a Sunday like it is today. We're here for you. All the best in property, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Thanks again, Romey.